Hi, we got two speakers to shake things up. Sustainability is always controversial and fun, so we want to make this very interactive despite the fact that they're far away. Avni is in Los Angeles and Sora, I think, is in Virginia. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and so a little bit about Kids on Computers. She'll explain it, but we met in January in Los Angeles. Scale is a Linux, big, amazing Linux Expo that I recommend if folks want to meet more people like this. So many of us will be there in March of this year. So I think Avni should take it away, but two sentences. Two sentences about each one. Avni's president of Kids on Computers, which works in many countries, including one right nearby in Mexico. It's very inspiring that she's done a lot of the stuff we've done. I think we share a lot with her team, her group's efforts. So we'll see a lot of parallels there. And Sora we know very well, but maybe some of you don't know Sora. She's going to try to give a hard-hitting talk on what sustainability really means when you do and don't pay people, and yeah, tough questions about how you retain volunteers and who is a volunteer. So let's begin. We're going to have about 20, 25 minutes for each, but people cut in at any time. That's okay, Avni?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Avni. Are you guys hearing an echo, or is that just me? I wasn't hearing that earlier. But so I'm with Kids on Computers, and we are just a little bit about us. So can you still hear me? Yeah? Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So please feel free to, as Adam said, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you have. I really want this to be a conversation because I know a lot of you have done, based on the talks like yesterday and today, I know a lot of you have done what we do with KOC. So I definitely think we can learn from each other, and I really would like for this to be a conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides, and I'm going to be sharing my screen here. Let me see if I can get this going.
See your screen.
Okay, awesome. So what we have today is, it's supposed to be a three-part talk. So I'll talk first about Kids on Computers, and then Sora's going to talk a little bit about Haiti. She's having a little bit of car trouble, so I'm hoping she can make it in time. And then Adam and Tony are going to join us for a really interactive portion where we talk, we have a Q&A panel and everybody talks about our experiences. But what we're really focusing on is sustainability and how, once we get these labs and these areas set up, like how do we keep them going and what constitutes success? So that's our, what we're really focusing on. So I'm going to start with Kids on Computers. So a little bit about who we are. So we're a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2009, and we are entirely run by volunteers. And Sora's going to have a lot of opinions about this specific aspect of it. But we are we're run all by volunteers. We don't have any paid staff. And our mission is to provide access to technology and educational content using donated equipment and free and open source software in areas where kids don't have access to technology. So over the last 7.5 years that we've been running, we've built 20 labs in 5 countries. And we've really worked on establishing a process in order to build the labs as efficiently as possible, scale, and ensure that the labs, keep running and last as long as possible. And we have over 100 people on the mailing list, but at any given time, I would say we have between 15 to 20, sometimes a little bit more active volunteers around the world. So this is a little bit where we are. So I just took a snapshot of our labs in Mexico. You'll see we have a concentration in Mexico. So we have 12 labs in the region of Oaxaca, Mexico, but we also have labs in India, Morocco, Argentina, and Nepal as well. So Oaxaca is in the southern part of Mexico. It is the literacy rate it has the lowest, it's a state with the lowest literacy rate in Mexico. So it is a very poor area. Most of the kids do not go on to even go on to high school, right? Because they're expected to work or get a job in order to support themselves and their families. It is also, there are a lot of single parent homes with one parent being in the States. So there is a lot of that as well. Okay, so I think one of the questions that happens like when you're trying to do installations like ours, or like when everybody has good intentions, it's like, well, how do you select a lab? Because the need is not small, right? I mean, there's so many places that need the lab, that could use the lab. But when people come to you, like, how do you decide, yes, you know, this is the place where we're going to work and where we're going to get a lab? And we have it's a checklist of only about like 10 or 15 items. So it's a very small checklist, but we have a checklist that any school that's interested in having a lab, and most of our installations are in labs. We do have a couple in libraries as well, but most of our, you know, where we donate equipment, it is in labs. And we really focus on, in that checklist, we really focus on evaluating the community of where the lab is going to go. So that is it's probably one of our strictest, I guess, strictest barriers, if you want to call it that, in order to determine if an area can really qualify and support a lab. And that really includes, like, what we require is, like, you have to have a place, and some of it's really basic, right? You have to have a room that's lockable, that provides electricity, where you have desks and chairs for the students, you have bars on the windows, and that you have a teacher who knows enough about computers to be able to teach it, and that you have a local technical contact to help you, like, after we're gone, right? Because it's like trying to find this happy middle ground from us completely moving there, but also being able to provide support and having a communication mechanism so that the labs can keep going on. So for one example in Mexico is that we have like Thomas, who's one of our oldest volunteers. He was a professor at one of the universities there in Oaxaca, UTM Oaxapan, and he serves as our logistical contact for a lot of the schools, and he helps us find you know, principals, schools that are interested in having labs. And Hermes in Oaxaca City serves as our technical contact to, like, visit the local labs periodically and help with technical issues and fixes. And that really makes a tremendous difference. I think the other part is, like, requiring that there be a strong community network with parent and teacher involvement. And it really makes a difference, like, when there is a good, strong computer teacher versus there not being, like, versus there not being a champion for the lab. Like, for example, in our very first school in Oaxaca, Mexico, it's a lab called 28 de Marzo, which is 18 of March is the name of the lab. I think it's the date it was founded. And the parents of the kids, like, there was no building, there was no room for the lab, right? There was nothing, but they really wanted one. The principal was like, you know, I think we should really do this. He knew Thomas. So the parents of the kids actually, like, physically built the lab themselves. And they, yeah?
I just want to double check what slide you're on. We've been staring at, like, an empty lab for a few minutes.
You have, okay. I think that's okay. Yeah, that's the one I am talking through this. Is that okay?
Sorry, just
okay.
making sure.
Okay, all right. Let's see, hold on, let me get back into presentation mode. And so actually, I'll show you that's actually this lab. So this lab, and Sochi is the teacher of the lab. And what she, like, so this lab is the one that we set up in 2009, and they have these bricks, like the parents actually physically built it themselves, and the government didn't believe the lab could be successful. So the parents, the first year, they chipped in and they paid Sochi's salary like the first year. And when the government saw how successful it was, they took on paying, like made her an official teacher and took on paying her salary. And as you can see, these computers are extremely old, right? But it is remarkable that she has, it's remarkable. Every time we go, she knows exactly which computer's working, which computer's not. And we've slowly started swapping her equipment out with like Raspberry Pis and newer equipment as time has gone on. But it's amazing, like with a strong teacher, like how the difference between keeping a lab going and not keeping a lab going, like what a difference that has made. In another school, like Camp 27, which was a school with disability, with kids who have disabilities, a local business like donated the internet, and the kids use the lab during the day, and the community is supposed to use it at night. And it was initially funded by the government, but the government like didn't pay the bills, so electricity got shut off. So like last year, this was one of our first labs as well, like back in 2010. And last year we went and like reset up the lab because we got a new location for it. But those are the kind of communities that we're really working with. And I think one of the differences of like between like how OLPC works and what we work is, or how we work is where does the hardware come from? We do the full stack as well, but we kind of cobble together the pieces from various places, like from what's out in the FOSS world. We initially started out taking equipment that you or I were ready to get rid of or ready to replace, and taking that into the country, like going through customs, figuring out how to get it into the location where we needed it to be, usually in suitcases. We did get a couple of FedEx grants to get the equipment into for large shipments, to get like a donation from a bank into Mexico. But that's been one of our biggest challenges, is like transporting equipment and how we do that. And we have also gotten grants to be able to buy equipment in country, which has helped quite a bit in terms of like newer equipment. Because as you can imagine, like when we got donated equipment, if it wasn't from like a school or a bank, it would end up being all sorts of different hardware, which meant like triaging and trying to install free and open source software on different types of hardware and different types of old hardware specifically. So that was a challenge. But with grants and with just fundraising drives, we've been able to either buy cheaper laptops or relatively cheap laptops, or this past June we set up a lab with Raspberry Pis, and we're super excited that that XSE is also going to be working on Raspberry Pis, we actually do have, like, Adam and team has a functioning version on Raspberry Pi, on the Raspberry Pis. But this past June we did a whole lab where the client side was Raspberry Pis, and we put the XSE server on a laptop that all the client quote unquote client computers connect to. I think and then this past August, the Linux Foundation, we did a workshop with them in Toronto, and as part of that workshop, for the kids there, we're learning a little bit about like how to do a basic operating system install. And that's not usually our target demographic, but as part of that workshop, Linux Foundation donated the laptops for that workshop. So we kind of like put together, like we find different ways and creative ways to get hardware. So we don't use the XOs, but we use, it's a similar, like, we're trying to do end-to-end, provide, hardware, software, and content for these communities. And software-wise, we've gone through several iterations. We first started off with Ubuntu, and it ended up being quite heavy and not, it had difficulty installing it on older hardware. We then switched to Lubuntu, which was a lightweight fork of Ubuntu. And then we found UberMix. Randy Tate, who's our VP, he came across UberMix, and it's been great for us. One, because it's a 5-minute install when you get it working, and two, the teacher has an easy reset option. Like if, kids will like put files here and there, and if she wants to reset it, every month, there's if she sticks the USB drive into the computer, the install drive, she can reset it in a couple of minutes. So that's been super great for us. And then application-wise, we use the text suite of with the text suite of applications, text math, text type, and gCompris. We've done Scratch in certain places, but a lot of these places the kids have never used a computer before, and the teachers in many cases have not. And so they're starting off at a level, before where we would start with kids in the U.S. or Canada. So we initially started with just the OS and software, right? And then we came across, as Samir said yesterday, like we were hoping that a lot of our places would have some sort of internet, but do you have, whether internet exists or not, it's not a binary question, right? So there were some places that would claim they have internet. This was one of our trips. I think this was a trip in 2011, and this is us. I think there was satellite at the city hall, and what we were trying to do is and I think we successfully did this, but we wired internet from city hall to the school lab, which was across the street. So we were on the rooftop, like actually wiring, bringing internet from city hall into the school and then down into the lab. And but again, it's like if the city stops paying, there's so many cases where they say they have internet and they either have really low bandwidth internet or they eventually stop paying and don't have it. So what we've realized, and this was great, because when I met Adam and then eventually all the XSC folks back at Scale, we realized the need for offline content, and we had been using Rachel for the last couple of years. We've been using Rachel in most of our labs. So the ones that existed when we went back every year, we would put a little. It was either a Mac Mini or a laptop that had large enough of a hard drive to put content on there. We would go in and put a router and set up a server. And then for meeting Adam, we're really excited by what XSC has, the amount of content it has, and the team's flexibility in trying to customize the content that the community really is interested in seeing, right? So that really appealed to us. So we're trying that out in one of our labs in Oaxaca City, and then we'll see, we're planning to go back in March or April this year, so we'll see, how that lab's doing and how they're utilizing it. It's actually a Raspberry Pi lab that has XSCE there. So I think so that's how we work, right? So it's very similar in terms of we provide, in terms of what OLPC is trying to do, right? It's trying to provide access to education via technology, and we're doing the hardware, the software, the content, and the games and the educational applications. But I think the question the group has is what constitutes success? Is it successful when a single kid has been exposed to computers, even if it's for a month? Does that constitute success? Or is it do we need to actually show that X percentage of kids go on to better their own lives, they better the lives of their community, they get a technical career or some other career, right? A more advanced career than what they would have been doing if they hadn't been exposed to the computers and the educational content. So that's something that we've been thinking a lot about, and I don't quite know the answer. I just know that we've steadily improved in our processes, right? We've steadily improved in the top three things that I have here, like equipment, software, educational content. The equipment and software we were doing from the get-go. We've added the educational content. I would say about 80% of our labs now have either some sort of Rachel or XSC in the labs from our work the last 2 to 3 years. And we have always required local community involvement, right? Because we want buy-in from the local community. I think we're getting better about having more concrete requirements. We've started a WhatsApp group from Mexico, right? So the principal and the computer teacher from every school has to be in that WhatsApp group and able to communicate with us. We are working with the local, the UTM Oaxaca, universities in Mexico have a community service requirement of their, in order to graduate, right? So we're working with that school and having Kids on Computers be an official group that the kids can volunteer with in order to meet that requirement. And what we are having the kids do is they actually visit the schools and help with maintenance, technical support and maintenance. And then education and training. So our strength as an org is on the technical side, right? We go to a lot of technical conferences. Most of us, I would say, have some sort of engineering background. And I think what we're trying to pivot towards, or at least trying to focus on for a little bit, is getting more education folks involved and developing curriculum and training materials to provide the support that the teachers need in the classroom. And I know that's a little bit different than just handing off the computers to the kids and kind of seeing where they go with it. And we're trying to do this hybrid model where the kids do have freedom to play and explore, but that we provide the support to the schools and the teachers that they need. But I'd be interested in hearing a little bit about how you measure success and what constitutes success. I don't know if anybody has questions or what you think.
Should we perhaps hold the questions until Laura does her thing? And then
Sure, but is there anything immediately relating to Kids on Computers specifically,
Or
just to
success.
clarify? Or?
Well, I just am not clear how much technical support and maintenance they are talking about providing, or is this basically an equipment donation period, or is it an ongoing program?
That's a great question. So the question was regarding if this is an equipment donation program or if there's ongoing support. So we definitely offer ongoing support, and that's like one of the things with our Mexico labs is we try to visit them at least once a year, if not twice. So we go back and revisit areas and offer additional training and education, and also maintenance on the equipment. That's a lot of it, and software upgrades as well. So the idea is it's an ongoing thing, but the struggle is that as we grow, right? So we started out in 2009 with the hopes of doing one lab per year, adding one lab per year, and we far surpassed that. So as we grow, how do we sustain that and how do we scale that, right? Because that's a lot of work. Even just in Oaxaca, it takes about 3 weeks to visit all the schools. So how do we sustain that? Because most of us have full-time jobs. We're all volunteers. And how do we make that happen? But the organization's goal is it's not just a equipment donation, right? It's an ongoing program to impact the community in a positive way.
Who do you work with in India?
Who do we work with in India? Our lab, was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So in India, we have 2 labs in Assam, India, and we worked with a nonprofit there that manages essentially like a school district, right? So it's in the district of Morrigan, and it's extremely poor area. So this is an area which does not even have, I believe I don't know if now they do, but when we set these up in 2013, they did not have flushing toilets in the whole district. So it's a relatively poor area. It is a private school, but the kids pay, or the kids' parents pay about $1 a month for the kids to attend. And so we worked with the nonprofit over there to set up these 2 labs. And it was so a lot of our labs are set up because a volunteer is from that area, and Vedanta Barua, one of our volunteers, he's from there, and his family is still in the area, so they were able to help us make the connections and get the labs up off the ground.
So I think we're going to hold the questions till the end for a real debate later. Sora's been waiting. Thank you, Sora. And yeah, one of the questions I'll have for later is trying to tie these 2 topics together. Kids on Computers has volunteers across Mexico, and not just in rich countries. And so I think Sora is going to help us think about what it means to be a volunteer and when it works and when it doesn't.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, Sora, and then I'm going to have, I think you have your slides, right?
I have my slides in a Prezi, which I'm assuming I can do some sort of screencast kind of deal, right?
Yeah, just share your screen. There's a
Yeah.
green
Yeah.
arrow button in the top left.
Cool. I see it. I see that I can say share. You guys should be able to see my entire screen. And then if I go here, you guys should be looking at a Prezi-like sort of deal, yes?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I kind of got involved in Haiti stuff in 2013, and that was about 5 years after OLPC donated thousands of laptops to the country. So one of the fun tasks I got to do was go around. They donated to 4 specific villages, so it wasn't actually that hard to track down these machines. So you go around to different schools, you knock on the door, you tell the director, hey, do you have those green and white computers? And you start talking about, oh, yes, he has them, but they haven't been used in years. Why not? Oh, because the money for the trainer stopped coming, and all of that. And you start having these conversations about, okay, is there any way we can put these machines back to use? So this is a photo from a school in Tomazo. And one really interesting thing was the school didn't have a constant supply of electricity. So in order to check whether all the computers could turn on, this was around 200 computers, I think. We had to take them to the orphanage where we were working, which was a little ways up the hill. So we had to borrow the orphanage director's truck to do that. And I remember it was kind of almost turned into a situation where he was holding the computers hostage, because we took them up the hill, we tested them, they all worked, it was great. And then we wanted to bring them back down to the school. And he was like, you should make sure the school pays for my truck to bring them back down. I need them to pay for my gas. We said, oh, it's no problem. We will pay for your gas. Here's $20. Take it. Thank you so much for letting us use your truck and your electricity. Thank you. He was like, no. I refuse to do this unless you get the school to pay. And he said, I really want them to step up and demonstrate that they have a commitment to getting these computers back. So it was an awkward situation, but it just kind of shows this orphanage director was American, and it shows kind of one mindset, sustainability of, I want to make sure the community is contributing. And I've heard that mindset from a lot of Americans. This whole idea of, I'm going to give them something, but they better give me something in return too. Otherwise, this isn't sustainable. Otherwise, they haven't demonstrated a commitment. Otherwise, how do I know that 6 months from now when I come back, those computers won't be back in the box? And I think it's good to be critical and to be thinking about how to involve the community. But just from my experience in Haiti, that we've got to be really critical of ourselves too. What are we talking about when we talk about sustainability? So working with Adam and Co. Thanks, George. Thanks, Tim. Thanks to for putting together these tools, going to deploy them on the ground, answering my phone calls, and talking to me for 5 hours in very frustrating and difficult conditions sometimes. So for us, it meant we talked to people about what they want, what they need, what wasn't working, what was working. We tried to get the training part right, so we worked with teachers to develop a curriculum. We did trainings, teachers and kids alongside each other. We had people, that guy in the striped shirt in the back, Junior, he was one of our local staff on the ground. So when we weren't there, when we couldn't pay the $400 plane ticket to fly back and forth to Haiti, when we've got that full-time job and we're back in the US, there's a Haitian on the ground who's able to take care of things. And he's able to talk a little bit better culture. Like, I speak Haitian Creole fluently, but there's things people would tell Junior that they'd never tell me because I'm an outsider. We did a lot of stuff with solar panels because electricity was an issue in Haiti. We did, there's a solar panel being raised on a roof. We did stuff with networking, so XSC, Haiti was one of the early testing sites, going to all sorts of places. I wish this photo was better. Like, I wish we'd taken a photo of the other side, from the other side, because on the other side there's a gorgeous mountain view that all of you are missing. But I gotta go to like remote mountaintops and install internet in a box, which was really cool. So all of this was cool, and a lot of very dedicated volunteers were putting time and energy and waking up early, staying up late to make sure that all this stuff worked and got together smoothly. But unfortunately, the issue we kind of ran into, so this is around 9 projects, 7 of them are at schools, 2 are at orphanage. And when I made this slide in 2015, like, there were 6 active projects and 3 inactive projects. And the reason that all of those projects were inactive had really been they ran out of funding. We had a donor who stepped out. And this is a big issue for us in Haiti, particularly because in Haiti, all of the schools are private almost. It's about like 90% schools are private. So that would mean we would go to a school and we'd say, you know, you guys need to commit the money and the time to have a teacher working after school with kids as a technology coordinator. And it was, you know, that teacher is probably not being paid for the work they're already doing during the school day. So it got to be really, really difficult to be asking people to work for free, basically. We looked at models like having the older kids who were super excited about using the computer and super advanced. We're like, okay, they can be mentors, they can be peer tutors. I think those models are still possible, but what we also found was a lot of the kids who were the most excited and the most advanced on the computers wouldn't necessarily be the best candidates for teaching the kids, the younger kids. There was this guy called Amabiel. He was 15. He could make like ridiculously gorgeous, amazing things with like photo editing software. But if you asked him, hey, come in and help me with this workshop I'm doing, he just wouldn't show up. It wasn't interesting to him. He preferred to work alone on his stuff and didn't necessarily understand, oh, here's how I give back. Or even like, he always told me, I'm not good at teaching people. He's like, I'm too smart for these kids. I can't teach them. So I think when we talk about communities contributing either in the form of, are the parents going to pay a teacher's salary for the extra work they're doing, or are we going to get volunteers in? You have to remember, like, is volunteering part of the culture? And how stretched are these schools for cash already? I'm getting, after the hurricane, I get a lot of schools emailing me, telling me, you know how you raised $2,000 for us to have a digital library? That's great, but can you actually divert that money and pay our teacher salaries instead? Because that's what we actually need to stay functioning as a school. So not every country is going to be in the same situation. Luckily, there are countries in the world that have made commitments to funding public education. And not every community is going to be in this situation. But I think for me, it's kind of been a journey of like adjusting my expectations about how long to commit to projects. So I think in the past, I kind of had this idea of you come in, you train people, and they run it themselves. Like, you get people to the point where they can run it themselves. And they don't need more money from you. They don't need more help from you. Maybe you come in and you upgrade the devices 6 months, a year later, but it should be its own thing then. And now I'm kind of realizing when we talk about sustainability, maybe we need to be thinking longer term. Some of the most successful work I've seen in Haiti has been these projects where an American church decides to commit to 20 years with a school. So it's not a 5-year project, it's not a 6-month project, but for 20 years they are paying, they're sponsoring kids, they're sponsoring teachers' salaries. And, that might seem like way too long. Like if we're being successful at this Teach a Man to Fish project, like shouldn't they be able to succeed by themselves at some point? But I think these problems, like when you talk about poverty, when you talk about global inequality, I think in terms of just how much support schools in the developing world are going to need from us to get these programs running, it's a lot longer term than I personally realized. So now when we partner with schools, we never partner with a school unless we have a commitment from a funder for basically, right now we have it set at 7 years. Like unless we have 7 years of funding, we don't enter into the school at all. And there's been people who told us, oh, bring it down to 5 years, but we right now we are really concerned about, if there's a disaster like the hurricane, we want to be able to give a little extra that month and all of that. So we're setting it pretty firm at 7 years, and we've had donors who push back on that, but we've also had a lot of donors who are like, yes, this is the right way to be doing that. And we've never had a school in Haiti push back on that kind of commitment. So I think what we're doing is kind of on the extreme. I'm not going to even recommend that everyone do it, but I am going to recommend that everyone be thinking when we talk about sustainability, how long-term is that going to be? What are you expecting from the community? Is what you're expecting from the community fair in the quote-unquote practical sense? And is what you're expecting from the community fair in their sense of the word? So if Haiti doesn't have a culture of volunteering and you're asking for volunteers, you're going to run into some issues. So that is my rant, everybody. And I'm really interested in just hearing responses to it because I'm sure there will be some. You can see my face now, right? Yes? Maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
Question.
Well, I guess at the beginning of this, the introduction, Sora, it was advertised that you and your other presenter were going to be arguing with each other about who had the right program when volunteers, by definition, are not getting paid. And I hear you saying that volunteers are a problem, but I don't hear you saying what the alternative is. Obviously, the alternative is to pay people for that work, but what's the source of the money that is going to be made available to pay those people? And I do hear your friend saying that they are an all-volunteer organization and proud of it. And I've been involved in both all-volunteer organizations and in organizations that have paid money. It's much better to get paid, but it is also not as easy to start an organization where that is, or to operate in the early parts of an organization where that is a principle. It seems to me anyway that you have to get started without that kind of money and then go for it afterward.
So I think volunteers have a role in any organization. I often tell people like the foreigners should be volunteers, the locals should get paid. And I have seen people successfully run volunteer organizations. I wasn't here for all of Avni's talk, but I'm sure she went over some of the things that you can do. I just think volunteer-run organizations I think people underestimate how hard they're going to be. So you talked about how hard it is to start a paid organization. I think that's true, but I think part of it is also people underestimate how hard it is to get local volunteers. I'm emphasizing the local part. In terms of funding, like I said, we've gotten pushback from funders, but we've also had funders who are like, that makes a lot of sense. Especially if you're going for like religious groups or we've been doing student groups where it's an organization that's willing to make a commitment to a specific place and a specific group of people. They are the ones who are willing to say, hey, we will do a bake sale for this place for 7 years. Every year, this will be our annual bake sale, things like that. So yeah, it's not easy. I would say there's hardships on both sides. But we've decided to do it this way just because that's really the direction people in Haiti were urging us to go. They're saying this, like, if you really want this to work, this is what you should do. And I think it's going to be different in every context. So that's why I'm laying out this is how the Haitian context is, and other folks are going to have different contexts and different approaches.
And George, were you going to ask something? Okay, go ahead.
I don't. I just think that's a very reasonable response to the situation as I saw it. So there's no real argument. It seems like if you can use them. No, I don't have any comments. Except
Okay.
Sorry, we don't have a great debate for you. But yeah.
Great presentation. I like it.
So I have some Haitian friends who I should introduce you to someday. They're very left wing, and they think there is a culture of volunteering in Haiti. They might be wrong, but that's their opinion. It's we had a lot of presenters from Nicaragua. I'm not sure if you caught some of that earlier this afternoon. Talk about a left-wing country, right? And I'm interested in how socialism and left-wing might either help or make worse the culture of volunteering. I mean, you talk about the Soviet era when the pioneers were supposed to volunteer and wear their little red scarf or whatever it was. Is that real in Nicaragua? I don't know. I mean, you have excellent community managers, we could tell earlier today, to make that kind of thing happen. And it is a bit similar to Haiti. Apparently, you said it's the second poorest in all of the Americas, right? And yet you have healthy volunteerism. And why is that the case? I think you should take a lot of credit, first of all.
Well, they have a government that's funding it too.
But well, maybe the bus fare and the snacks are paid for. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, well, with the socialism issue, and that's not like that, with the red cars, because actually it's like more a publicity thing of the government, because actually socialism is not happening in Nicaragua. I mean, there's like a sort of a honeymoon between the government and the private sector, I would say.
Right.
But okay, yeah, it is really hard, and it's really hard to get volunteers. I think that it has a lot to do with the culture as well, because I mean we're the second poorest, okay, in America, but the people used to be really collaborative with this type of project. And as I said, I think that one of the most important issues is to create that solid platform of partnership that can allow you to get to the students and get to those types of space. The other question was if we pay for the volunteers or what we do.
Or pay for food or transport or.
Okay, well, yeah. That's a really good issue because we have a lot of volunteers. For example, now we have almost 200 volunteers in Nicaragua working just for the maintaining process, besides in other areas of the organization. So with these volunteers, every day we give them the lunch at the office. And in just some cases, we give the money for the transportation. And these are cases that, for example, the volunteers that don't live in the city, so don't live in Managua, the capital. So in these cases, we give them the transportation and for everyone the lunch. But let's say that something that we give them monthly, we don't do that. But for example, what we do with them is that we created a training plan for them. So for example, we have the students of computer science. So every 2 weeks we give them workshops from the Innovation Center, for example, okay, we're gonna have workshop about Python programming, for example, or JavaScript programming. So that way the volunteer can also receive something else during the while they're making the while they're volunteering. And this happened with all the profile of volunteers. If they study economics, for example, then we give them a workshop in data analysis, for example. Okay, so that way we can, I mean, it's sort of a way to give them back what they're all doing with us.
Sorry, you guys missed that. We didn't mean to steer this back to Nicaragua for the whole Q&A, but they do have a lot of stories.
Oh no, that was really useful. Mm-hmm.
That sounded great. And I think it's interesting that you're pointing out, I'm forgetting your name, but the woman who's working in Nicaragua. Say it again.
Sofana.
Yeah.
Sofana, thank you. Okay, but what Sofana is talking about with paying in different ways, I think that I really like that. Or also the way Sora is talking about paying people locally versus people who are coming from like first world countries or quote unquote first world countries. I think that's a clean way to say who's paid and who's unpaid, because I think when you try to combine, I do feel like there is a problem when you try to combine paid and unpaid volunteerism, and this was from, and I agree with this was from the article that Adam forwarded us, which the Benjamin Michael Hill article, which is like when you try to have people from the same area doing the same work and you have some of them paid and some of them unpaid, I think there are going to be issues there. So if you can either carve out a specific project or that has some that requires special skills that the volunteers cannot do, or if you separate it by region or where somebody's from, I think that's a way to do it. I think the question I have for Sora though is, so if you're guaranteeing like you have 7 years of, like you want, before you'll take on a project or before you'll partner with this, partner with someone, they need 7 years of funding. How do you hold that? Like, where is the accountability and where is the accountability coming from? Like, who is going to manage that project for 7 years? And is that, like, how is that being done? Or is that part of one, is that one of the roles being paid?
Yeah, so the payment, like part of the 7 years of funding, most of that would be payment to the person who's running it. And also like a commitment, we're using tablets, and tablets are supposed to run out in about 3 years, you know? So someone has to commit to replacing the tablets when they run out.
I see. So the funding is hardware plus
hardware
labor.
plus salary.
Yeah, hardware plus salary. Okay. Okay. And so the person's accountable to the donor, or the person's accountable to like your organization, or how does that work?
So normally like donors are the ones who approach us. So there'll be like someone funding a school in Haiti and they say, look, I want to do tech. I hear you guys are good at tech. What do I need to get you guys to come? And we're like, you know, we will come for free. We'll pay our way. You guys need to pay for our hardware, and you need to commit to paying for 7 years of the person's salary. And you need to commit to replacing that hardware when it wears out before we'll go. So right now we have them signing a contract, and we do, we facilitate a conversation between them and the school. So normally we'll do either a Skype call, or we try to arrange it so we're in the country at the same time they're in the country, the donor. And we sit down, donor, school management, and us. We say, look, this is the contract. This is what your donor's committing to. So yeah, there's no guarantee the donors won't back out, but at least like previously when I'd done stuff, like there wasn't a conversation about how long the donor would be committed for. Like we'd had donors put money up for a year, and then when the next year rolled around, it'd be like, do we pay again or not? So at least if you have that conversation up front, you know, the risk won't be totally removed, but there's a signed piece of paper that says this is what we're doing. And, you know, that paper's not magical. It won't make money appear out of nowhere, but at least it starts a conversation between the donor and the school and us. And, you know, we're not the police. We can't go after people if they don't pay. I'd love to get something where the donor actually puts down the money account, but most donors, like, they're doing like an annual fundraising process, so that just won't happen.
Got it.
I push a little harder on Avni's question. Who pays the piper? The piper might end up in excessive control of this community, potentially, in a worst case scenario. Whatever you feel about Tuesday's election, do we really want the people with money calling all the shots? That's an accountability question there.
I don't think so. It's not the donor is not calling the shots. The donor is simply making a commitment to pay for 7 years. The school decides how that gets run. We work with the school to decide like how much the person should get paid. Like we're kind of more like a facilitator between the school and the donor. So we have donors tell us like, wait, why are we budgeting this much money? And we explain to them, look, we've worked in X number of schools around Haiti, and this is like a standard rate. You need to commit to paying this. So like we don't want donors deciding how much to pay. We don't want donors deciding when to cut off funding. We don't want them deciding whether or not the person's done a good enough job and funding should continue. Like donors really don't get much of a say. They sign this contract, they're committing to that funding for that period of time.
What's the size of the projects that you're talking about, Sora? About how much money would a donor have to commit to either on a monthly or a yearly basis?
So we are recommending right now that people get paid $50 for working after school twice a week. And that's 50 American dollars because the Haitian good is doing crazy fluctuations right now. So 50
a month?
Yeah, 50 a month for like 2 hours a week of work. And yeah, so it would be that times 10 times 7, basically.
Alex, that is answer.
You phrased the word we. Who is we? Is that Unleashed Kids?
No, so Unleashed Kids is Adam's organization. I kind of I'm a college student, so I hesitate to use the word I run my own organization. Because truthfully, like I go to class during the fall and I go to Haiti during summer. But I run my own organization called called Kids Right. And in addition to doing all this kind of funding and training and community support, we also do a lot of research, which is a big part of why I'm still a volunteer and I'm not getting paid, is because I'm benefiting as a scholar, as a future person who's going to work in this field. Like I'm benefiting from these projects.
There's no age requirement for running your own board.
There is a time requirement, though.
There is a time requirement, but there's no age requirement.
I actually have to run, everybody. I'm currently stranded in the back room of a McDonald's in the middle of nowhere, and our Uber, which is the only Uber for many, many miles, has arrived. But I'm really happy to answer people's questions via email, and I also know like this is going to be saved, and I'm definitely going to be watching it later. So thanks for giving me a chance to talk, and I will. I'm eagerly awaiting to continue the conversation, and I'm sure Avni has a lot to offer in my absence. Bye, everyone.
We had a couple more questions. If people can, if Avni, you can stay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first of all, Kids Right, even though she left, you know how to spell that, right? WRITE, kidsright.org. So you can find out a little more if you go to her website, kidsright.org. Yeah.
This whole discussion is right on target as far as my experience in Rwanda. And every one of these things is different. So it's really hard to write a set of rules and say this is how it should go. I think the key word here is expectation. I think the real key thing is before you get involved in one of these projects is to make sure that everyone has a set of realistic expectations. And in a cultural environment, this is pretty hard. So to give you an example, the school that I'm working with primarily in Rwanda is at Cole St. Jacobs. It's a Catholic school, but it's not supported directly by the parish because after the genocide, they set up an orphanage. And they set up philanthropic organization, which is Catholic in nature, but it's not, it's one that the Catholics put money in, and then they have a group in Italy that actually runs it. They have a local office. And then, just to get things more complicated, a group in Germany volunteered to help them build the orphanage and then build a school. So they sent down engineers and bought the materials and got local labor and got these things built. And then a group in Stuttgart, which at that time was called WCE, but now Care for Kids, decided that they wanted to put in computers, but they started out with this route of using computers that were donated in Germany and getting them transported into Africa. And the people that they gave the computers to in Africa said, we want new computers. We don't want these old computers. Well, you can understand if you went from a P2 era to today, you know, with no USB and, all that stuff. Yeah, recycling computers is, when the technology changes as rapidly as it does, not really so interesting. You saw that school that had all CRTs, right? And those heavy things, they still work perfectly, but today you want the flat panel, you want digital, and so on. So anyway,
Well, is the kid gonna care if he's sitting in front of the computer?
no,
People don't steal
It's-
CRTs.
yeah, that's right. And yeah, they don't really care there. But you heard all the discussion the last 2 days of us that, these Exos are so old, nobody would ever use them, and it's not fast enough, and we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have something else. And so, it's more our perspective, I think, than anybody else's. But nonetheless, what happened then was they found the XO program, and so the Care for Kids decided what they would do is they would buy XOs and distribute them to this school. And that gets complicated because, in fact, these were old PC XOs that belonged to old PC Germany, that were given to old PC Germany by old PC back in G1 days when they were trying to, get things going. And there was no demand for them in Germany. And they had to go through all kinds of legal machinations because they'd been given by old PC in Florida. But it wasn't old PC in Florida, it was in Boston because they changed their legal designation 4 times too. But anyway, ultimately they got the laptops from old PC Germany and got them transported to Rwanda, to this school. So meanwhile, Rwanda as a government has sponsoring old PC laptops. There's about 400,000 with a commitment to go to 2 million over time. And so now I think something like on the order of 20% of the primary schools in Rwanda have the laptops. So what about this school that got the laptops from Germany? Well, it's okay. Because in Rwanda, a public school and a private school is essentially treated the same, unless it's a really for profit to make big money. So Catholic sponsored schools, Seventh-day Adventist sponsored schools, Jesuits, they're all acceptable as public schools. So they told us, oh, no problem, we'll support your laptops just like you were part of the government program, right? But then we get into these social issues. Wanted to conduct a training session for teachers. Well, the teachers are on vacation. And if you're asking the teachers to come spend their time in a workshop, they're using extra time for which they're not being paid, and they really ought to get a stipend. And they're coming to school not in the work context, but out of the work context, so we really need to pay for the transportation. And they're coming for a workshop that's lasting all day, so we need to find some way to get them lunch. So we, that is to say, the group in Stuttgart, ended up paying for the teachers to come to the workshop to train them in how to use the laptops. Well, we didn't have good sense enough to set expectations up front. So we just ended up rolling with the punches in a sense. Right? My model, at least, was the computers coming into the school is an investment. But the school should pay to operate this investment. We should just have a one-time, it's done. Well, it's not working that way. And I don't know that it will work, partly because we've set the expectations wrong, partly because of the way the culture works, and partly because the reality, the teachers are not being paid to do this. And if you're gonna have somebody do something, you should pay them for it, right?
Tony, can we hear from our guest who's waiting
Oh, I'm sorry.
patiently behind you?
No, that's okay. So I agree completely with what Tony is saying about setting expectations. I feel like that is a key. It's a key metric for if a community is going to be successful or not. Is if expectations are clearly defined at the beginning of the work. Because I think as we've grown, I think we're much more clear with schools, with teachers, like and communities, like what we expect from them in order to keep the labs going. And we try to frame it such that it's like, in order for this project to be successful, in order for your students to truly benefit long term, this is what is required. But we're much more clear now than we were before, and that has helped. That has helped tremendously. And then also, I think another key thing that has helped is making sure that there are local folks, local people that the communities can go to ask for help. For some reason, they really have a hard time emailing us. They have a hard time emailing us, reaching out to us if something is not working right. And in our beginning years, we would find out when we got there, like when we revisited that, oh, you know what, something became unplugged. Their router became unplugged and none of them are able to connect to the server anymore. And they didn't know how to fix that, right? So there's just setting expectations of like what has helped quite a bit. So I very much agree with that.
And to take Sora's stance, because she's not here to speak for her, our expectations are often out of whack. So who should be setting the expectations is a complicated question. Because many of us came out of a one laptop per child idea that we just need to fundraise for the hardware. Well, maybe that expectation is all wrong, but we have that in our heads. In fact, we should be fundraising for teachers' salaries, but it's a big change.
I don't know if necessarily it's like we need to fundraise for teacher salaries, but I feel like it's something that the community and the donor organization kind of needs to come together to determine. And the expectations may be different depending on like culture, depending on location, and depending on even school, right? But it is something that having a conversation at the beginning definitely helps with. But it is in my experience, it's definitely not just the expectation is that we're providing the hardware and that's it. Because that just doesn't, that has not, I don't know, in our experience, that has not just worked. That has not worked.
So I think I'm not talking fast enough. Well, the thing we found that was most successful is we worked up a deal with the proprietary group that's funding the school, that they would hire an additional teacher who would have no teaching responsibilities, but only responsible for the school, for the laptop program. And the quid pro quo was we were pushing them that they should let the kids take the laptops home. They were adamant that the kids may not take the laptops home because they get lost or stolen or broken or something. So what they've done is this teacher is going to have a 2-hour session every afternoon for the kids to come voluntarily and use the laptops. And that's probably much more use than is actually occurring in the classroom. And so that's really worked quite well. But except now, last year, this fellow, Brother Emmanuel, found 2 other schools and he's encouraged them to join and be part of this on the basis that these schools already had laptops from the government. But these government laptops have never been out of the box. They were just deposited at the school, they were put in a corner and locked up, and that's as far as it's gone. Well, they're in 2 different locations. I don't know how to set expectations with either of these schools. The one that's furthest away is a parish school, and the parish priest is the one who really wants to get the laptops used. That sounds good, but how does the parish priest get money? Well, he gets it from donations from his parish, and they don't have any money, right? So how to get expectations set there before we provide support, I don't know. We don't have to fund the computers, school server and routers, yes, but not the laptops, because they already have the laptops. But there's teacher training, setting the expectations with the teachers as to what the computers will do for them, how it might fit into their program, and so on. Another school that's much bigger than Ecole St. Jacobs in the same district down the hill. Everything in Kigali is up or down. This has to be down. But they're a very prestigious school in that district. And they want to use the laptops, but a part of the administration says we're a very successful school, prestigiously recognized that we don't use the laptops. Well, it's going to help us if we use the laptops. So you can't very well twist their arm very much because, we don't need it. But on the other hand, there are some others who really want to do it. So they're saying, come, get going. It's really not that easy to figure out how to do this. But I think the expectation is important. If you're involved in enough of these, you develop some sense for, what's happening at that particular place and maybe what's happening in that culture, and you can establish some estimate on your own idea of what it's going to cost to do this thing over a period of time, who should end up paying it, and how can work. And I hope I'm getting to the point where I have some understanding of that, but I'm really more ignorant than I am knowledgeable in this area. It's tough.
And maybe comment more than question, the idea that Walter Bender and many others have advocated that the community needs skin in the game. Maybe Sora was pushing back on that a little bit, but I have a fond memory of Jamaica where there was a big cultural hubbub over some parents who were recording pornography using the EXO laptops. And what was really interesting is we wasted, I think it was most of the afternoon, asking the locals, I think it was mostly teachers, to design an intervention or a mitigation or whatever, to design their own policies to deal with this. And what was, I think it was Mark Batley, who many of you know, who took charge of the whole afternoon. And he said, no, us foreigners, we're not going to make any policies. We're going to stay here the entire afternoon until you design the policies to deal with whatever was the situation du jour. And it's hitting a lot of these issues because it was, teachers volunteering their time. They didn't really want to be there, but after hours and hours and hours, they said, well, yeah, this is how we're going to solve the problem. We're going to have a crew, check the laptops every week, make sure pornography is not being recorded, and that, the civic process can be very exhausting to do it by volunteers, but more satisfying if you make it through that process.
Was this homegrown pornography that
Yes.
the parents were
The parents had recorded, and then the other parents, there was a serious blowback, right? And, probably over-regulation of the situation, which probably wasn't happening very frequently, but it became the story of the town.
So I have a follow-up question. My previous question to Sora was how much a typical project or say a small project in Haiti would cost. And she said $50 a month for 2 hours a week. And that's a commitment that she wants to have for 7 years. So if my math's a little bit rusty, but that sounds to me like it's about $600 a year. Is that what she's talking about?
For the one staffer, yes.
For one staffer, but that's one project, isn't it? Or is it?
Plus hardware. So she also mentioned including the donor would also have to fund the hardware.
Not just hardware.
For years.
Not just hardware, but yeah, many other pieces.
All the pieces,
Yeah.
the hardware itself, but then the ongoing salary problem is $600 a year.
Yeah,
$50 a month.
I like her to focus on what we nicknamed the TLC, the Technology Learning Coordinator at that one school. Of course, there's many other pieces. He or she will need internet, whatever, the equipment will fail, the solar will fail in that school. But I do like her focus on that one piece because, $600 a year will motivate many of the other pieces.
My dream is that at some point in Kigali, for example, that I will have technical support that's local. I don't know if any of the others have had this experience, but every time I ask, how are things going? They're going wonderfully, everything is great. And then as she said, when you actually get to the site, you find out the server hasn't been turned on for 6 months, and half the computers are broken, but everything's going great because in the culture, they don't want to be in a position of saying we have a problem. And so at some point, you need local support that can see on a week-to-week basis what's going on. I visit these sites once a year at best. And I just have to deal with whatever went on in between and do the best I can to get it going again. I think if it was a ball that once a year I have to kind of push it so I can keep it rolling, hopefully until the next year.
In the financial plan for our Ethiopia project, there is a person budgeted that will do the technical support. And the funders in New Jersey are actually aware of that. And so this is actually part of the budget.
But
So-
in New Jersey, you can find people.
No, this is an Ethiopia project. The funders are sitting in New Jersey,
Okay,
but the local tech support will come from Addis.
okay.
So how do you find a tech support person
Yeah, that's-
in,
for
There's a
example.
lot of like.
It's for us. I mean, I can take that one.
so you find them in the cities?
Yeah.
And they commit to going to the rural
No,
area?
this project is in the city.
In the city.
Avni has an answer for that. Go ahead, Avni.
It's different for every location, right? So in Mexico, it's like we're working with people who went to UTM Oaxacan and graduated from there, and they've become KOC volunteers, current UTM students. In Morocco, it's Peace Corps volunteers who communicate with us because most of the Peace Corps volunteers are not technical, but it's different for every location we found. Like every country, it's different. So it has helped us to have a concentration in areas because every new community you work with, it involves like finding new local contacts to help with the schools. And once you get if you get one lab successful, then it's much easier to get labs 2, 3, and 4 like going in that same area.
Again, Rwanda is maybe a little different. I spent about 3 months trying to get together with the head of the computer science department at the local university to see if we could set up some kind of a program where I could try to train some of their graduates to help with the schools. Never worked because, again, culturally, primary schools are a local concern. The Ministry of Education's concern stops at the secondary school level. The teachers at the secondary school level have university education, but below that level, they have a 9th grade education, and there's no cross contact, to the point that in Rwanda, the XOs are not permitted to be used at the secondary school. They're not computers. They have to be Windows machines.
So they're only used at the elementary school level?
Yep, it has nothing to do with them. And then on top of this, here at this was a computer science undergraduate program whose graduates could use Office. Literally. Their courses in computer science were spreadsheet, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. They could make you an Excel spreadsheet that could do miracles. But if you ask them to go to the command line, what's that?
We had similar experiences in Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia.
Yeah. So it's a secretarial school, not a computer science.
But they call themselves computer science departments. So Carnegie Mellon set up a branch in Kigali, and for $20,000 a semester, you can get a real computer science education.
So there's a happier story that I won't represent accurately, but again from Mark Batley. Maybe in contrast to Sora's story, that the super geek might not be the best trainer or the best evangelist or the best weekend mentor for the computer lab. So he had huge success, and I think if I understand how that happens, it's partly the power of his personality, but also they established a local culture in that whole region of central Kenya where everyone wanted to be this tech trainer because the first couple guys, I think they were guys, had this glamorous recognition. And so they had this job of carrying the laptops in a backpack to each of the schools, and they were really recognized as the ambassadors. They were the community evangelists and the tech experts. So somehow it was the best of all worlds. So it's certainly possible to recruit and groom this role, but you do have to define it. And I think I suspect that it's partly the power of Mark Batley's personality that he defined this role as a super media IT coordinator. And then everyone wanted to be that, even though the salary wasn't great, but there was a salary.
I don't have a salary to give anyway. And of course, I think Mark had the advantage of spending more time in Kenya than I've been able to
Yeah.
spend.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of difference in what you can do.
We visited a couple of these projects, and it's really great to see how engaged the students were in this.
Well, does anybody know what's going on in Kenya right now? Today?
No, we visited them in 2012, so that is 4 years ago. No idea what's going on.
Sorry, can you repeat that a little bit louder? You're saying in 2012 you set up something in Kenya?
No, we visited a couple of the WellPC schools in Kenya around Meva, and so it was really great to see how engaged the students were. And the students in that project, they were going out to other schools to sort of engage with them, do teacher training, do student training, and do classes on the XOs. And the students were really, they were the WellPC ambassadors or the tech geeks basically, and they were really like loved and endeared.
Yeah.
So it was really great to see. But
What was the catalyst for them like going out to other schools? Like what motivated them to do that?
That was their job. They were
that was
paid.
their job. Yeah, they were paid for doing this.
They had to carry the laptops every week to rotate through this very, very rural part of central Kenya, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty central. It's close to Samburu, where Samburu National Park is, Meva National Park. This is also where a lot of the national parks, the money that they get goes into these schools. So tourists basically pay for the schools by paying like $500 to enter the park. They fund the schools and part of this workforce basically.
That's awesome.
And that was my experience in Tanzania as well. They had a school that was part of a safari location, and so the safari visitors paid for the laptops and so on.
And again, no small credit to Mark Batley's personality. He had very high expectations of them. So there wasn't that like, oh, well, this is kind of a simple third world country, we'll flip on the electricity, do a little office training and then shut down the power. Like he was pushing people all the time. And somehow that became infectious. That like, wow, this is a job that leads me forward, it leads my community forward. It's a real civic package that Mark helped develop, I think.
What's the educator?
Yeah, he was a media, Canada media teacher for like 20 plus years. Yeah.
And maybe that is one of the keys, is like setting expectations really high and not just taking, the minimal success criteria as okay, right? And saying that in order to be successful, it means that, not only do you have to make sure that the computers in this school are functioning and the kids are using them, minimum of twice a week, but you also have to work on mentoring other schools or getting setting really high expectations. And then if they hit a little bit below that, that's still okay, because that's still awesome. So I like that.
And I think it's also about setting up the environment such that whoever is doing the training, that in the US, the nerd is often seen as the weird person. There, what we've experienced there is that the person who was like leading these classes, they were the heroes basically, and they were admired by the kids who were taking the classes.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's a good feeling for those kids, right? So that's.
Yeah, and that adds to the appeal of that role, right? So.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, speaking of local heroes, before we wind down here, I think we have people like Samir and Hillary who need some extra recognition for, and Aaron. I'm sure I'm missing a few others.
Alex?
Yeah, Alex. June. Yeah, local heroes aplenty in this room. Yeah. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for setting all this up. And thanks for making attending and presenting remotely possible.
And if you want to help in Mexico, what do you do?
So volunteer at kidsoncomputers.org. Email. Or reach out to me at avni@kidsoncomputers.org, and I'll get you involved. We're going in March or April this year, and then we'll also go in November. And we'll be at scale back in Los Angeles. So we have California presence. I'm based in Boston usually, so we're all over.
Mexico and March around my birthday.
Say that again?
Mexico March around my birthday. That sounds about right.
Yes, come. Sounds like a great thing. Was that Jerry?
Yeah.
Or was that George?
Thank you very much. We really appreciated your presentation.
Thank you. It was fun. I wish I could be there in person next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.